Hi everybody and what's up? My name is Maria Athena and today I want to talk about what it takes to become fluent, which is a question I get all the time, and it's actually a series of maybe 5 or 6 questions that all kind of are lumped together and say, when in my learning can I expect this? So I want to go through all of these little mini questions that I get because they all relate to each other. But before we get to that, I want to discuss our sponsor italki for just a minute. italki is an amazing resource for foreign language learners. You guys have heard me talk about it before, and you know that on italki you can sign up for tutoring sessions in more than 70 languages. I myself have already done tutoring for Dutch and for Irish, but when I signed up for my Irish tutoring lesson, I forgot that it was a 24-hour clock, so I ended up having a lesson at 1:30 in the morning instead of 1:30 in the afternoon, which was my fault, but it was still a fun experience. italki is extremely convenient to use. You can use it at any time. You get to talk with so many other foreign language learners from all around the globe and find out how the languages you're learning are actually used. So you get to learn the authentic language, and that is totally awesome, especially if you're trying to sound as native-like as you can, or even if you just are really interested in getting to know people from different places. So I hope you guys check out italki. If you go click on the description, or the link down in the description box to my promotional page, you can sign up for one tutoring session and get another tutoring session completely free, so I recommend doing that. And also, if you want to friend me on there, we can chat with each other in some of our target languages. So I hope to see you on there. But so yeah, a question I get all the time is, how long do I need to learn a foreign language until I'm fluent? And this question differs for a lot of people because obviously I don't know how much you guys are doing every day to actually learn languages, so I can only really talk from personal experience. And I know that you can read the accounts of other foreign language learners who have blogs and Tumblrs and everything and find out, okay, how long after someone started teaching themselves or after they started learning in school was it until they felt completely, at home in the foreign language. I would say for myself, it took 2 years to become fluent in German, and that's in my spoken German. Within the first month of actually learning, I was trying to do as much German study as I actually could. So one of the things that I would do was read Harry Potter, because I started just a month in reading Harry Potter into my German learning, I was able to read in German a lot sooner than I was able to actually really speak it conversationally. I was also into writing back then because I had all of these friends who were, TUTORING fans who were all learning German, or people that just, I met them on whatever language learning websites, and we would chat in German and share different cool words that you should definitely know how to say, and we would just, I would SMS with a whole bunch of people from Germany at that time, and I had friends who were German, so I could chat with them a little bit. But it really depends for becoming fluent how much time you actually put into it, because although I say it took, about 2 years for me to become fluent in my spoken German, that was after 2 years of intensive study. Now, I was going to school at that time, but just every day, every free minute that I had, I was using to spend German. So in general, it totaled up to probably about 3 hours a day, is what I generally go with, and that was just throughout the day, on breaks at work, that was at lunch at school, in the morning on the bus, and then it could have been even longer, depending on if I, had a free evening, because I was probably watching German videos online or listening to German music and practicing pronunciation and doing all that grammar stuff and everything. But I would also, make time to go to the library and stuff, so I would have all of this specific time that I would set out to learn German, and then on the weekends it turned out to be at least 5 hours per day of German learning on the weekends. So even though it took 2 years, it was an intensive 2 years. That said, you can learn a language in school for a whole bunch of years. I know, and you guys probably know, a lot of people that learned Spanish or French or whatever language in school and never became fluent in it, don't really use it, and so their language learning skills are kind of just on the back burner. But you also have other people that learned for 1 year in school and then did a little bit of stuff on the side and then became totally fluent in conversational French or Spanish or whatever language. So it really depends how much time you put into it. Another question that I get a lot is, well, let's say I'm not fluent, but let's say that I want to think in the language or dream in the language that I'm learning. How long does it take until you do that? I would probably say it took me maybe about 5 months of learning German until I would start dreaming in German. But when I would dream in German, my dreams had to be logical. Like, it was so weird, because I would be mostly talking to German celebrities, or I would go on a trip to Germany in my dream, and that's why I was talking in German. And I would always recognize some of the newer stuff that I learned in my lessons cropping up in my dreams, but then I would even think to myself, oh, this is cool, I'm speaking German because I'm in Germany in this dream. Which was kind of weird, because then I've had some dreams where I would be in the US and I would talk to somebody in German or in French, and then I would think, but wait a minute, this person doesn't speak German or French, and then I would kind of get snapped out of my dream and then realize, oh no, this is a dream. That was never fun, because it is really cool to dream in foreign languages and stuff. But so for me, it took maybe 5 or 6 months until I started dreaming multilingually. Up until that point, I had English and Greek dreams, like a handful of Greek dreams, and they were usually mostly when I was actually in Greece. I would definitely say that if you go to a place where you are immersed in the language all the time, you will think and dream a lot more in that language. I remember, I probably told this story before, but the first time that I went to Germany I was staying at my host family's house right around Frankfurt am Main, and every day, right before I would go to sleep, I would go to journal, I would go to chat with my friends in the States, and when I would think about what happened in the day, all of the quotes and everything, every story happened in German, but when I would go to think about it, I would kind of think about it in English, but then as I was falling asleep, I would have this running German commentary going in my mind. So it was actually really weird, because it was I'm trying to sleep, but then just thinking about what happened that day. It was like a cacophony of English and German mishmash sentences just saying this is what we did and this is fun, and really, really basic stuff, but just even being able to at the end of the day, when I was going to sleep, my mind, it wasn't entirely in English at that point. It was pretty bilingual, and then over the progression of my trip, got to the point where I was only really thinking in German before I would go to bed, which was really cool for me, because I had always thought that bilingual people were the coolest people. And I saw this post on Tumblr that it was something along the lines of, that moment when you've been learning a language for a while and just all of a sudden it hits you and you know it and you're fluent. It was kind of like that. I'll try and find that Tumblr post and post it in the description box, because it's a really good post. But I would say with thinking in German or thinking in a foreign language, that could take you longer. I know some people think at first in their native language and then they have to translate things. What I tried to do to minimize that when I was learning German was I would learn certain things in German, like prepositions. So if I was learning a new preposition, instead of looking and memorizing the English to German comparative charts for those, I would actually just read a book and see, okay, well, he put it on the table or under the table, and then I would learn on and under and a whole bunch of other German prepositions just based on the context that they were in, which actually got a little bit problematic when I started studying German at university, because I knew what was being said in German, but then I didn't know what the exact English way of saying that was, which some people say that's a pretentious thing to say, oh, I don't know how that's said in my native language, but it's actually a thing. I know, for instance, that when it comes to certain topics that I really haven't, covered in English in the longest time, for instance, das Lebensherrsystem, the feudal system, in my one German history course, we totally explored the German feudal system, and so I can name a whole bunch of things about that in German, but it takes me a minute to remember the English terms, because it's just not something I studied, in the most recent time I talked about it was in German. But yeah, I think it was definitely important to try and learn things in the context of the language rather than through translation, because that did, like I said, that overpassed that step of needing to translate everything. Plus, even from the beginning of my German learning, I was also doing French at the time, so if I would watch, for instance, we're going with Tokyo Hotel because they have all their translation stuff. If I was watching one of their interviews that they did in German, it might have been done in France, and so it had a French commentator who was translating everything, and then it would also have English subtitles sometimes, because the fans will put those on. So even from the very beginning, I was trying not to solely rely on a kind of a dual translation method of learning. It was mostly making all of my languages that I was learning interact with each other. And that's why it's hard for me to say for other people how you can actually get yourself to start thinking in a foreign language. I would mainly say if you talk to yourself a lot in that language and surround yourself with it, even if it's just for several hours a day, like if you like listening to music in the car and you just only put on a German soundtrack or whatever language you're learning, just put on that soundtrack for a long trip, you'll find yourself after a while, at least from my experience, beginning to think in German or whatever language that is, just because that is what you're constantly being surrounded by. And that's why it's awesome, if you can, to do some kind of immersion experience, whether it's a weekend trip to a local retreat house, which I've done for Irish, or actually going to a different town or city or country where they speak a different language and, you know, living with people on the daily basis who actually speak that language. Basically, if you're trying to ask how long will it take until I become fluent, I would probably say just have patience. If you're working on your language skills all the time, it's all contributing to the betterment of your language skills. And I know that kind of sounds like a cop-out, but it's true, because language is not something that you can really measure your progress in. You know, to a certain extent, you can take a placement exam and see generally where you fall, but to see on a day-to-day basis where your progression is and where you're getting better at is kind of difficult. So that's why even now, the way I think about languages that I'm learning, I try and think in a very positive way. I don't think, as I said in my French video with my sister, I don't think, oh, my French is terrible. I think that I'm working on my French and it's getting better. And this is a thing that I have this philosophy in many other aspects of my life where, for instance, this has nothing to do with language learning, but I've been coloring my hair for the longest time, and so it got really unhealthy. And I decided, okay, well, I'm going to take steps to make my hair better. And although it's not at its best state that it could possibly be at health-wise, it's still improving. And so instead of seeing the negative aspects of it, I see the future positive aspects because I am working on it. And that's the same thing with language learning for me. I don't know if that was a weird reference to make, but that's how I see language learning, is that whatever stage I'm at, that is not my final stage in that language. So it's just, it's open to improvement. So there's no reason, in my opinion, to belittle my own learning by saying, oh, I don't know this, I'm bad at it. I'm just saying, no, I'm learning, that's it. Don't need to say anything else about the subject. But yeah, so I would definitely say if you're trying to speed up the process, however long that process is of trying to become fluent, if you surround yourself with a language, practice every day. This is also extremely important. I unfortunately don't have the time to practice every day with some of the other languages that I learn, but I still use them. I'll still listen to songs in them or watch a TV show in the other languages I learn each day. But then maybe one day a week I'll set out a chunk of time where I'm going to do a grammar exercise, or I'm going to read a text and write an essay about it. Usually not an essay. It's usually like 300 words max, which I'm so excited about this. I just redid my whole language learning schedule that I have, and I'm testing it out with this new schedule just so that I can see how it works and see if it actually is a productive way of learning languages. And then probably in 2 or 3 months, if I actually stick to it, I'll give you guys a report about how it was. But basically what I'm trying to do is do a different language each day of the week, where I set aside about 45 minutes to an hour and a half just to practice on grammar, writing, lots and lots of grammar, actually, cultural stuff. So like when I do Latin Tuesdays that I do, I will read classical texts from different Latin authors, Latin-speaking authors. And it's just a lot of fun, and it gives me more inspiration to learn than each week, because I'm looking forward to my next official lesson that I'm going to have. But then throughout the week I still want to engage with all those languages in my daily life. So yeah, that was kind of on a side topic, but I will fill you guys in about the whole language learning schedule and how that works out in several months after I've actually done it for a while. But I would probably also say that if you're trying to speed up your amount of time that it takes you to become fluent, you do want to look at different levels of the language. Don't just work on stuff that is at the level that you're currently at. Look at stuff that's easier, look at stuff that's more difficult. If you want to go and play repetitive online language learning games, then go ahead, because you're doing something. And it's also a lot of fun for you, and it reminds you of stuff that you need to work on and stuff that you haven't covered yet. So that's why I like going back. I actually like, I want to go and get some children's books in German, just because they're written in a different style than all of the stuff that I studied at university. So it's a whole different subset of vocabulary, style, and everything when you're talking in a children's book than when you're talking in whatever, you know, Goethe wrote or something. But it's good in that sense, because you get all of those levels that you would have covered as a native speaker. Like, you would have been likely influenced by that level of communication in German, but as a foreign language learner, you skip out on that. So I say, like, nope, go back and do all that stuff that you would have done as a kid learning that language, kind of. And that should all contribute to the way that you're able to express yourself, so that you're not just expressing yourself like somebody who studies Germanistic. You're also just able to talk to everybody on a daily basis in a various ways, basically. So I hope that I answered some of those questions. I was trying to find whoever asked them, but they've been asked so many times that I can't remember which one was the last one. But I saw someone mentioned it last week, like a whole series of questions that were related to thinking and speaking and fluency, dreaming in languages, and so that's what I thought. But so yeah, then as you probably got an answer to this really frequently asked question, do I think in German? Yes, I think in German even when I'm speaking in English sometimes. It really depends. I'd probably say about 50-50 every day. 50% English, 50% German for the most part. Sometimes more, sometimes less. It really depends on the day. But and yeah, I do still dream in German and French and English. But my question for you guys is, do you dream or think in your languages? How long did it take you generally? And what do you think is most important to do in order to quicken the fluency process that you're going through when you learn languages? So I hope to hear from you guys, and I will see you next time. Bye!